Basketball is on everybody's mind right now, but the term March Madness, where did it originate? Well, you are going to find out in this interview with Keith O'Brien, who just wrote a brand new book about Larry Bird and that whole legendary Indiana State Sycamore team called Heartland, A Forgotten Place, An Impossible Dream, and the Miracle of Larry Bird. So what do you say we don't worry about breaking any brackets right now and find out more about Larry, legend, and the Indiana State Sycamores on this episode of Doses of Dane. So the book, Heartland, the Larry Bird, the Indiana State Sycamores. I mean, perfect time of year to have this thing released, right?
Well, I hope so. It is an origin story of Larry Bird, the story of his rise in rural Indiana in the 1970s, and the story of the enduring miracle, and it is an enduring miracle, of his 1979 Indiana State team, which I believe is one of the great underdog teams of the past 50 years.
The whole story of he and Magic and the whole NCAA finals and all that, it's almost like it just happened now. You bring this book back to life. If you were going to rename this, if it wasn't Heartland, what would be the one word title that you would name this? If you could redo the title, what would you call it?
Gosh, I don't know. You spend all this time writing 100,000 words that appear in the book, and then you spend maybe just as long sorting out, one or two words for the title itself. This was the title. Heartland was the title of the book when I first conceived of it and wrote it up as a proposal. I don't know. I love the title.
Now, he was not interviewed for this book at all, right? He declined it. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, he did decline to participate in this book. Obviously as a journalist, as a historian, I want to talk to people, and I certainly want to talk to the people at the center of my story. But I've learned over the years that you can often get a more accurate portrait of a person by talking to 12, 15, 25, 100 people around that person than you can by talking to the person, him or herself. And certainly, this book here is more than just a Larry Bird story. This is the story of a team, a time, a place, and how one moment in time can change everything. And, I conducted over 200 hours of interviews for the book.
Wow. When you say that about learning about that person and not interviewing the person, it kind of reminds me of the movie Field of Dreams, when they were trying to find out more about Doc Graham. And, obviously he was passed on, but they were talking about different stories and things. So it kind of brings to light. That's almost the same kind of thing here.
Well, when a moment is as big as this moment was in 1979, it touches lots of people. I'm talking to you right now from Terre Haute, Indiana. The arena where Larry Bird played in is about 1 block away from where I'm sitting right now. And last night here, we had the launch for the book. And for that launch, most members of the 1979 team came back. Many of them flew in from around the country to be here. We sat on a stage together. An enormous crowd came out for the event. And, at one point, the moderator asked the crowd how many people who were there, were also there in 1979. And, about half of the crowd, raised its hand.
That is incredible. I mean, just to have that, the celebration, Terre Haute, you think, this is probably something that there's not much going on in Terre Haute, Indiana. So, to remember this historic time, that had to be just unreal for them.
Well, and I think that what makes it so powerful today is that this story is just going to be much harder to replicate in 2026. Can an underdog team come out of nowhere and rumble all the way to the Final Four? Sure. Can a talent like Larry Bird slip through the cracks and end up at a small, smaller school like Indiana State? Sure. But when that talent ends up at Indiana State and proves that he is as good as Larry Bird is, that player's not staying. So to have a Cinderella story like this is just going to be harder and harder to replicate in these moneyed college sporting times.
Sure. When you were researching the book, Keith, was there something that you were shocked by? You're like, oh my gosh, this story, this is definitely going in the book. What was the one thing that you might have been shocked or surprised by?
There's a turning point in this season, the miracle season of 78-79, where Indiana State plays New Mexico State in a game in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And, without belaboring the point, there's a play near the end of that game where if a player for New Mexico State makes the shot, Indiana State loses, the undefeated season is over, and maybe as a result of that, everything is different. And, I tracked down that player who missed this shot for New Mexico State, a man named Greg Webb is his name. And, I didn't know if Greg would want to speak to me. I'm calling specifically to ask him about, a low point in his life, missing this shot that would have iced the game and ended it. And Greg was thrilled to talk. What became clear through that interview is that this story was even bigger than Larry Bird and this group of guys in that Indiana State locker room. That Greg Webb even was forever changed as a result of what happened on the floor that night. And, Greg Webb told me that he believes that he deserves some credit for starting March Madness because if Greg makes his shot, Indiana State isn't undefeated. Maybe the Cinderella shoe cracks apart, and there isn't a Bird Magic showdown in March 1979.
Man, that's a great story. Do you have a favorite chapter in this book? If you had to narrow it down between one of the ones you have in there, is there one that you go, okay, this is the one I had the most fun writing?
There are parts that are easier to write or more fun to write, I think, in every book. Certainly that game that I just described, which I do believe is a turning point game, not just in the season, but for the people on the floor. That game in Las Cruces was a lot of fun to write. But I think the most powerful part of the book is really the last section. After the game is over in March 1979, after this team has returned to Terre Haute, and after we begin to see how this one moment in time can really reverberate through the decades, changing the lives of the people who were there, that to me was the most powerful stuff.
The book is out now. Highly recommend you get it. It sounds exciting. I just want to jump into it right now. I've had the chance just to pick apart a few things here and there, but haven't had a chance to read the entire book. Is there something that didn't make this book that you would love to have put in, but you're like, okay, this is going on the cutting room floor. I can't put this in?
I mean, lots of things. I think if you're a good writer, you are gathering way more material than you need and leaving a lot of things on the cutting room floor. My job is to tell a story that people want to read, a book that people don't want to put down. You want, as a writer, readers to finish a chapter and want to press on. And so to do that, you got to stay on track. You got to stay true to the narrative. And at times that does mean, cutting out things that when you initially found it, you thought was amazing.
And one last question I have for you. If this book were to somehow transform into a movie down the line, like we're going to make a movie about Heartland, who's playing Larry Bird?
Well, Definitely not me, because I'm about 5'8.5", shrinking by the day. Last night I stood on that stage with all of those players. I never felt shorter. You know, I love the idea, and I love talking about it. Maybe we can talk it into reality, but I'll leave those kind of decisions to casting directors and producers.
Keith, thank you so much for your time. The book Heartland, A Forgotten Place, An Impossible Dream, and the Miracle of Larry Bird is out now. Can't wait to read it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Podcasts by Federated Media.